Hi, for this clip I want to talk about reading, and reading as it applies to medical school applications, and also just for fun. Reading for fun, even if you're not applying to medical school, some of these books that I talk about hopefully will be enjoyable reads. I originally put this clip together because a lot of you have asked me about what kinds of suggestions I have for applying to medical school, but hopefully this clip will also be helpful or useful for people who are just interested in medicine and want to read a good book for fun. Before I go into the book list, I felt that I should build a rationale for why you should read. And this is because I know that I've seen some of my classmates when I was in college, sometimes their favorite book was organic chemistry, and they didn't really get a chance to read other books beyond what they were learning in class. I know sometimes, in terms of practically speaking, it's really hard to find the motivation to read books outside of class because you're just so tired learning chemistry, biochemistry, trying to prepare for medical school. It's a really long process. But hopefully during the summertime, you'll have a little more time, and so this is my brief list of why reading is helpful and that it's a good idea to read even if you're really swamped. One of the most important reasons to read is because medicine deals with the human condition, and there are a lot of social factors, a lot of moral dilemmas, ethical situations that you'll probably never have thought about. I know I didn't think about until I read some of these books, and I think they really helped me think about problems differently. The second reason practically is that when you're applying for medical school, you're going to have to write an essay. And sometimes it's really hard to be able to articulate your own previous experiences in 1,000 words. And sometimes when you read these books, it will help in your writing tremendously. They often say that the best way to write better is to read a lot. And so this is really a practical reason why, even if you're really busy, even if you're already volunteering, your grades are really high, and you have wonderful recommendation letters set up, this would be a practical reason why it's helpful to read. Just as a human being, I think it's really important to read about medicine, even if one's not applying to medical school, and if you throw out all the practical reasons, just because there are so many things that you will learn in these books and in these experiences that even in medical school, when you're learning about medicine, you probably won't have time to learn. And so to read about these issues will only enrich your understanding of a lot of these complex problems that even in medical school there might not be time for professors to teach you about. Alright, so the first author on the list is Atul Gawande. He's one of the best writers of his generation and has won a MacArthur Fellowship for his writing and his research. In his books Complications and Better, he talks about medical errors, being a surgeon, performance, why doctors make mistakes, and the subtleties that come with all of the above issues. The next author is Jerome Groopman. He's a professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and writes regularly for The New Yorker. This latest book is called How Doctors Think, but he's also written several other books, and like Gawande, he's able to break down tough subjects into an easy-to-read format. Marcia Angell is the former editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, which is one of the top medical journals in the world. Here she talks about the drug industry, the flaws, and how to make effectual changes. Like Marcia Angell, Jerry Avorn talks about the problems of the drug industry and areas of improvement. I think both these books are must-reads in that you can finish them at a brisk pace, but learn a whole new world about medicine. These books will certainly cover topics you won't hear about in medical school, but absolutely need to learn about because they're directly relevant to medicine, medical practice, and to your life. The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down by Anne Fadiman won the National Book Critics Circle Award and was a required reading for our first-year medical school class. So all my classmates, we had to read this, and you might be surprised to learn, we all read it. This is considered a classic exploration of cultural competency, and if you want to learn about what happens when two cultures come together and clash to treat a person, this is definitely a necessary read. Tracy Cater's Mountains Beyond Mountains is actually one of my personal favorites, and the reason why is if you're looking for a role model, for a hero, you definitely need to read this biography of Paul Farmer. And I know it's going to sound kind of cheesy, as if I'm making a commercial or advertising for him, but basically what he did was really amazing. Him, Jim Kim, and their team ended up curing millions of people of multi-drug resistant tuberculosis and treating AIDS in poor countries and impoverished settings, when everybody thought they couldn't do it. Just everybody, and by everybody I mean the WHO, a bunch of well-respected professors, everybody thought Paul Farmer and Jim Kim could not get the job done, but they got it done. And Tracy Kidder, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner, tells this story in a gripping fashion. I think it's going to be probably made into a Hollywood movie, because that's what it feels like, a Hollywood movie, and that you just cannot believe the odds that they were able to overcome. Dr. Farmer himself has also written several books, as he's professor of both medicine and anthropology. Pathologies of Power is but one of his many excellent writings. Of an older generation is Dr. Sherwin Nuland. He's a powerful and renowned writer who has won prestigious literary awards. He's also a professor at Yale Medical School, so he knows his stuff, and you may have heard of his book called How We Die, which won the National Book Award. These next two books are collections of essays. The first one is called On Doctoring, which includes essays, poems, and excerpts from great authors like Hemingway, Frost, Chekhov, Carver. Personally, I didn't really like this collection that much, but I think it's a helpful collection in that if you go to this book, you'll see who has written about medicine. And in this short video, I can't talk about all the many books that are definitely good reads. And so the authors featured in this collection are authors you should definitely check out if you have the time, in case I miss any authors. These next set of books are not directly related to medicine, but I think will help keep you open-minded and give you new ways of thinking about old problems. I'm going to start off with The Tipping Point, which deals with social epidemics, how small changes, seemingly trivial changes, end up making big impacts. Another book along these lines that I think is a great read is called Freakonomics. Both these books fall under a broader category, but I just picked these books because they're most popular. Blink deals with issues of the unconscious and subconscious, and has an interesting chapter exploring why patients will sue one doctor as opposed to another. Blink has explanations that go contrary to what you think, and this is what probably makes Blink a really interesting read. Fast Food Nation deals with the history of fast food, and the authors argue it's just not pretty, the amount of toxic stuff that's in fast food. The Cigarette Century is similar, but it's focusing on cigarettes. And did you know, for example, that the American Medical Association was actually under the payroll of Big Tobacco for several years, and even invested in the tobacco industry, or how the tobacco industry is now aiming to get all the developing world hooked on smoking. Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth talks about global warming and how it's real. Jeffrey Sachs' End of the Poverty argues that extreme poverty can be eliminated by 2025. So why did I put these books in? It's kind of random, but I put these books in, again, to make the point that medicine is not an isolated field. For example, many diseases can be ended if poverty was ended, and many diseases are going to start cropping up if global warming continues. Finally, the alternative medicine section. I put this in there because I think it's critical to continue to challenge yourself to think beyond the normal boundaries. Oftentimes that's how the big breakthrough discoveries happen. Unfortunately, a lot of professors, they frown upon this section, but I like to emphasize the reason why they frown upon this section is because there's a lot of fakes and quacks that publish in this alternative medicine section. There are a lot of authors who carelessly tell you things that haven't been backed up by any kind of evidence whatsoever, and I'm not recommending reading those books. However, there are others who are reasonable voices that can teach you valuable things that you won't necessarily find in a standard curriculum in medical school. One book that I put up is by Ted Kapchak, who's an associate professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, and the only professor at Harvard whose degree is not an MD degree, but rather an OMD degree, or Oriental Medicine Doctor degree. This book is an introduction to traditional Chinese medicine. There are many other books that are probably good books to read in this category, but I just don't feel comfortable recommending them as I don't really know how good they are. I did want to point out that this section is an important section to keep updated about because, first of all, many people use complementary and alternative medicine therapies even if their doctors tell them not to, and so it's important to know about these therapies. Second, there are therapies that 10 years ago would have been considered alternative, but are now entering the mainstream. For example, taking high-dose vitamins to prevent further deterioration of the macula, which is part of the eye, would have been considered alternative 10 years ago, but is now the standard practice after research backed it up. Omega-3 fatty acids and acupuncture fall under the same category. Things that are alternative may be bad for you, but may also be potentially very good for you. And so sometimes more research needs to be done, but other times the research has already been done, but just needs more publicity and time for the topic to sink in. For these reasons, I think it's good to keep updated on this section periodically. That's all I had for today. Inevitably, what's probably going to happen is that I'll forget a book that I really should have put up. And so please check the video description for updates. And thank you for watching. I hope this was of some help.